Well, welcome everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning to wherever you're at, whatever part of the country you're at. I'm actually putting this video together for a group of people that have asked me to put some material so that they can access it at their own time. Some of them have been coming to groups and meetings that we've been holding here locally. However, some of them have had to leave due to work commitments, due to contracting commitments, but nevertheless, they still want to stay connected and be able to receive some information. This topic today that we're going to cover, and I'm actually going to break it down into different sections because it's gotten a little bit deep. The research that I have dug into has tremendous amount of information, and some of it has been revealing to myself, revealing to my family as well, revealing to some of the people that have been doing life with me, if you may. And I pretty much called it open mouth, insert foot. I think for the most part, everyone can say that we have been through a situation like that where we have said something that perhaps we regretted saying, or we have gossiped about someone, or we had related false information, or, that old comment that, hey, didn't your mama tell you if you didn't have anything good to say, don't say anything at all type thing, right? Or in Spanish, it's por andar de hocicón, right? We said something that we weren't supposed to say, or we just let our tongues and our mouth get out of control sometimes, right? I call it diarrhea of the mouth. We just vomit stuff out, right? And sometimes we lack self-control. And I know for the most part, as I'm going through this, you're probably thinking of someone else right now. It's like, oh yeah, so-and-so probably has that problem. So-and-so, I'm going to forward this message to so-and-so so they can hear it, right? They're probably talking about them. But in reality is that all of us have probably engaged in a situation like this where we have gossiped, or we have slandered, or we have spread rumors about somebody else, right? So that's what we're going to do on this particular topic. We're going to dive right into exactly what is gossip, the origins, if you may, and how it impacts people, how it affects people and whatnot. So what is gossip? So these days, pretty much gossip relates to slander. It relates to something negative that impacts people throughout. It pretty much defames people, and it expands sometimes the truth. Sometimes people come to you in secrecy, or they confide with you with a secret or something, and they go around and they tell something else, and that truth gets extended to something else, right? Or they add to it, and so now it's some kind of a rumor, an additional talk about a personal or private affair of somebody else, right? The act is also known as dishing or tattletaling, right? So nonetheless, it's the intention to sometimes hurt someone on purpose, or you'll use that information to defame someone, right? To be able to knock them off their high horse. But the reality is back in the day, originally, this type of gossip started back to the research that I found as early as I can go back. It was back in the olden days. Gossip was actually something good, believe it or not. Gossip was about the midwives being in there in a very intimate situation, giving birth to babies, one-on-one type thing, and the ladies from the town would gather outside the room, and they would almost try to eavesdrop or try to collect information from the midwife as the baby was coming about, and hey, it's a boy, it's a girl, and it's healthy or whatever, right? And that's how the town would get information and welcome this new individual, this baby, into this new world, right? This this coming world. But, somehow it got perverted. Somehow it got turned into an entertainment that we see it now today. And so that's really what we're going to be focusing on, is as to what we see gossip and slander and rumors as to what has gotten into today, with how social media has really just expanded the possibility of it, going around the world in just a split second, right? The news, social media platforms, many of them out there, right, through TikTok, to Facebook, through MySpace back in the day when it started, right? But nonetheless, it's turned into something hurtful. I can tell you, for us here in my house, it's zero tolerance. So much so that one of our daughters actually had to learn this the hard way. And I'll share with you guys a very intimate experience with her middle child. She was the captain of her cheerleading team, and she entertained gossip, and she came to us in confidence. And we warned her, is like, hey, number one, you're in a leadership role. You don't entertain gossip. If you entertain it, then you are allowing it. You're promoting it. And so we gave her advice as to, hey, how to go about diffusing the gossip and building up a culture of a team building environment, a nurturing environment, a compassionate environment, right? Because more than likely, when someone is gossiping around you, that speaks volumes of the person's insecurity, right? Or the hurt, the pain that that individual has and carries inside. That's why they're gossiping around you, because they're really hiding their own imperfections, right? And focusing on other people's imperfections, right? But nonetheless, it speaks volumes about that. So in doing so, the very next day after giving, that talk to our daughter, she decided to go exactly the opposite way. So by the end of the school day ended, I had parents calling me. I had the coaches calling me. I had parents knocking on our door. And so lo and behold, my wife wasn't home yet. And so what I ended up doing, I took the executive decision, and I had warned her on this. Hey, if you cannot handle the leadership role, your cheer team is no longer. I will pull you from the team for an entire year. So that's how serious gossip can be. And I'm taking this perhaps maybe to a level or to the extreme where people say, oh no, well, that was just too extreme. And no, not really, because if you grew up in a household where gossip, was very detrimental or was very deconstructive, you would understand why, I tolerate it at a 0%, no matter where I'm at, no matter what leadership role I'm in. It's just simply unacceptable. If it's not building someone up, then guess what? I do not allow it. And so that is essentially the hard lesson learned. My daughter now sees it, and actually she encourages other people. We gave her the tools for her to not allow the gossip to happen, allow the gossip to go on. And she's actually taking this to a whole different level. She's still involved in after school activities. She's actually playing flag football right now. And she's actually team captain for one of the volleyball teams at a rec center here, the Boys and Girls Club. So she's actually taking this whole new role, this whole new persona, and she sees the imperfections of other people, the bullies, if you may, sometimes, right? And gossip has really just ruined a lot of people's careers. Perhaps the gossip that you guys have experienced has been in high school, right? It's like, hey, did you hear so-and-so, had sex with such and such and they're pregnant, right? And oh, did you hear they also have an STD, and they don't even know who the father is. Oh my gosh, right? And it gets blown out of proportion, and it ruins a person's, future without them even having any factual information, right? Or maybe the gossip started during the lunch break room, and they're talking bad about you when you actually walk in the break room and everyone just stops. For a fact that someone is slandering you, right? And it's hurtful to you. It's hurtful to the team environment. And it's actually hurtful as well in productivity when you are in a work environment, or perhaps it's your experience with gossip goes to a family member. You confided with something on a family member, or a family member experienced something very intimate with you while they were next to you. And instead of keeping that information to themselves and supporting you through that experience or that situation, they go and tell someone else, hey, I witnessed X, Y, and Z, and man, it just wasn't right. And so that becomes very detrimental to the person. Mind you, they were violated twice. Perhaps that experience wasn't a pleasant one. And now the person that got to, instead of support them, they got to experience it, instead of them being supportive to them, now they're slandering and destroying that individual throughout. And instead of being, being to the point to where they're building that up and being supportive, it becomes very, passive aggressive, becomes isolating. It harms other people. And so there's a morality, spectrum that we really have to look at when we see this information. So what does gossip look like? Well, I already covered some of those topics, some of those experiences that you guys might have seen. But, some people see gossip as trivial, as hurtful, and hurtful and socially or intellectually unproductive. That's really what it comes down to. Some people view gossip as a lighthearted way spreading information, so it's like, it is what it is, right? And we see it becomes the norm. It becomes so common, especially with the news, right? And the news, really all it is gossip, right? It's information. Hey, well, so and so got arrested today, and so was indicted today, or such and such happened across the world. There's natural disaster. And I'm not saying that all news is bad. What I'm saying is sometimes this information can get taken out of context. It all depends on who's giving it and who's receiving it. So there's different people involved in gossip, right? And I'll be covering that probably in section 2 of this. So in the psychology world, perception of those who gossip is individuals who are perceived to engage in gossiping are regularly seen as having less social power and being less liked. And that's why they gossip. They want to be able to engage. They want to try to be able to fit in one way, shape, or form. And because they hold some valuable information, right, and gets the endorphins of other people going, and it becomes addictive. It's like, wow, it's like they want to jump in, right? That they want to fit in, that they'll share that information just to be liked, right? But in reality is they have a less social status, less valuable social status, and less value of themselves. And that's why they bring themselves down to that level so that they can be higher than somebody else, right? So the type of gossip being exchanged also affects the likability, whereof those who engage in negative gossip are less liked than those who engage in positive gossip. So if you were to engage in positive gossip, more than likely you're going to be better liked than that, because it's like, hey, well, if you're saying bad things about that person, I wonder what you're saying about me. Now, if you're saying good things about that person, man, I'm pretty sure I want to hang around you because you're saying good things about me as well behind my back, right? And now this is according to a study done back in 2003 by Turner and colleagues. And so this is a lot of information put together, a lot of information that was done in numerous studies actually, but this was the one that was most relevant to the topic here at hand. So we all know that, people gossip, right? But we have to look at a person's feelings. We have to look at the intent behind it. Once we start, is really, really hard to stop. It's like, you start gossiping and you can literally see people almost like run over and grab, their little bucket of popcorn and, just start eating and just staring away at the gossip and listening. And then they go around and they spread the gossip to someone else. And it becomes so addictive. It's like eating a bag of M&Ms. Peanut to me is like the peanut M&Ms. I can't just eat one or two, It's like I got to go around. I got to go and eat the whole freaking bag, right? It's like I can't stop, right? But nonetheless, it's not to say that one or two M&Ms is good or is bad, but probably the whole bag, it's probably not a good idea for me to eat the whole darn thing, right? The other thing that we have to consider is that, and it's pretty sad, that the further out the gossip goes or the message goes and it's shared, what happens is it becomes further away from the truth, or the fact being shared, and people, like I said, will add their 2 cents to it. It's like, hey, remember that that telephone game that we played when we were kids, right? Where you would start at the end of the line and someone would whisper a message to you in your ear, and then the next person shares it to the other person, and the other person, and the other person, and the other person, and the other person. And at the end of the line, the message is completely different than the original message. Well, that's what happens with gossip. It is essentially childish. Wouldn't you agree? And it doesn't stop there. It's just not a work environment. It's not just a home environment. It's not just a school environment. I've actually encountered this in the church environment. That is correct. Pastors, you guys have allowed it to happen within your congregations. You guys running ministries as leaders, in a leadership role, whatever leadership capacity you've been, it's like it gets spiritualized really, really quick. Oh, well, let's pray for Mr. So-and-so because let me tell you, they really need extra prayer today. But whatever the case might be, it's not a laughing matter. The problem with gossip, it is very difficult to see in the mirror when we are actually sharing something about someone else, right? But people get so creative with it, and it's sometimes so disgusting, disguising, that it even shows up as a prayer request. And like I said, we try and spiritualize it, right? Hey, we really need to pray for brother so-and-so. And then it turns into just divulging information. And then it gets turned into rumors. Or sometimes we even try to justify the gossip by saying, hey, but what happened was true. They told me directly, or I saw it directly, right? Or then we just try to justify or validate the gossip and say, hey, I'm only sharing with you because I'm truly concerned about them. I'm truly worried about what's going on in their life. It's like, it really scares me, or I'm really concerned. Or I've actually seen people, tear down in tears. Oh, it's because brother over there, man. And it sickens me. It sickens me that they're coming with me or with someone else, or I see it with more gossip. And little do they know, it's like, hey, don't tell me about it. If you have an issue with that individual, then you need to go back to that individual and address it with them. And whoever spread that gossip, you need to go back to that individual and say, hey, it wasn't right. I will not allow it. You see, but many times, like I said, the church, work environment, your home environment, we allow it, we normalize it because that's just what everybody else is doing, but it does not make it right. Right? So we have to take into account really what is going on with this disease, if you may. It does affect us psychologically. It does affect us chemically. Back in my military time, we would call it reconnaissance, gathering information. Go out there and see. Military folks understand this very well. You go out there, you collect data, you collect information, and tell us what the enemy is doing. Tell us what the locals are saying. Tell us, what the eyes in the sky are seeing, right? And bring back that information to operations center, operations control, whatever, so that we can better plan and strategize our tactics and put the data and information together so we can better go for, an attack, a surprise attack or anything like that, right? Or even for you old school gangsters, right? That have now turned, pastors or whatever, you still have that way to function in your bloodline, right? It's the same thing. If you were out there dealing drugs or whatever, right? You would go out there and you would send your soldiers to go out there and gather information. They'd go see who's doing what over there, right? And they would come back with information, right? It's like, hey, well, so-and-so is doing this, so-and-so is doing that. And now you had information as to what's going on in your neighborhood, or the area that you would claim, right? So it's no different. It was still considered gossip as gathering information and using it for an advantage, using it perhaps, to be good or perhaps to do something bad on someone else. So moving on, you can see that gossip doesn't always have to be bad. Right? There is some good points about gossip. There's some good points about recon or gathering information, right? To be able to serve an edifying purpose, right? Hopefully it's not for you to go out there and deal drugs and be having someone on the lookout or anything like that, right? But know that it can be destructive. It can be impactful for someone else, right? We're going to dive into what Scripture says, what other supporting factors are out there about gossip, right? The reality is that we can't believe that everything that is said must be true, right? But we do have to believe that everything that is true must be said, right? In other words, just because someone confided in us doesn't mean that we have to repeat it, right? We can confide in ourselves to keep that secret within us, because in reality, hey, we all got secrets that we don't want anyone else divulging about us, right? So Scripture pretty much says is that the power of our words have the ability of both life and death. So if you consider, like, have you ever killed? Have you ever murdered? Well, if you kill with your words, guess what? There you go. So, but why would people do such? Why would people slander? Why would people try to kill with their words someone else's reputation, someone else trying to build up, someone else trying to live their life, someone else that is struggling, and trying to get on their feet? Why would people do such a thing? Well, I can be honest with you on this one, and looking at myself, because I have been that individual, and I'm coming to you from that perspective. It's because I couldn't take a good look at myself in the mirror and look at my own flaws and do something about my own flaws. So I wanted to hide someone else's flaws. And that is exactly what you have been doing as a gossiper. Next time, we're going to be diving into who all gets involved, how they get impacted, and how to avoid a gossiping situation.